All right, hey, welcome back to the Liverpool Black Men's Podcast. I'm your host tonight, Chase Johnson Lynch, and I'm surrounded once again by my brothers. And we're getting fortified and stronger because we're adding more to our ranks and everything. And what we want to do is express our positivity about what we want to be discussing each time we come onto a podcast. And, and I was talking to my brother there, Errol there, and I was talking to Addy, and I was just thinking, you know what? We need to actually kind of I wouldn't say set the record straight, but actually have a positive and not destructive conversation around religion and Christianity. And sometimes when you throw out the word Christianity, the arguments begin. But so that they don't, I'm just going to just introduce my brothers to my left here, starting with you, Adeyinka. Just tell us who you are.
My name's Adeyinka. Thanks for having me on your show here. I'm a Christian. I am an Anglican Christian, and I'm actually an ordinand, which means that I'm training. I still got my training wheels on. And training to be a vicar myself in the Anglican tradition.
Nice one. I remember we had that conversation. I knew it would be great for this podcast. But then I'm also joined by my main brother, also a co-host on Big Condo Online, has his own show called Discovering. My man James Diboe.
How you doing, Chase? I'm great to be back on Big Condo Online. And basically, I'm an independent researcher on African history, ancient African history particular, indigenous peoples around the world, particularly the melanated peoples, the first peoples to ever reach any place on the planet. Also, I don't have a religion, but I have a connection to people who are spiritual.
Yeah.
So if you're the religious person, you're spiritual, we definitely have a connection.
Nice one, James. Yeah. Thank you very much. And then, what really inspired this particular podcast was watching my brother Errol here on your show, James, on Discovering, when you got to really kind of whoa, you broke my brain with some of the stuff you were talking about, Errol. So tell us who you are.
Well, yeah, my name's Errol Graham. I'm a local activist, you could say, chef, bit of this and that. Coming from the Rastafarian tradition, but made that transition to Orthodox Christianity, being Ethiopian Orthodox faith. So I'm a member of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And obviously, you had that discussion with me and James, and we can discuss a little bit about what that means, and go from there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't say what my actual faith was because I'm an American and we're pretty faithless. But beyond that, I grew up as a Roman Catholic, and naturally an African American church and everything in Harlem and everything. So I grew up on, the Black Christ on the wall and all that, and I'm pretty sure that will come into this conversation. So I'm going to start it off. I'm going to start it off hot. I'm going to start it off with you, Addy, because you wrote up the topic that you wanted to discuss and everything. So why don't you tell us what the topic is, and basically from there we could just discuss it, not in the free fall, but peacefully, brother. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad and pleased that you were able to accommodate me here this afternoon. But yeah, the topic I wanted to talk about, the title that I came up with was "Christianity is a white man's religion."
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to kind of throw that out there because, quite honestly, I have been fortunate enough to live in Liverpool, work in Liverpool, but also work around Europe, around the world, travel different places, both for work and for holiday. And I've been a Christian for almost 25 years, roughly. Close coming to. So, my whole life I didn't grow up as a Christian, and I was quite anti-Christian for a number of reasons. We can go into that if you want to later. But when I did speak to people going around the world, a very common reaction that I had from a number of people was like this, like furrowed brow, like can't quite compute. Why are you young at the time, black man, a Christian because, you know, Christianity has got nothing for you. Christianity is a white man's religion. Christianity is used to subjugate black people. Christianity, you know, if you look at all the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus, why would you want to bend the knee and bow down to that? It's just oppression upon oppression. And yeah, I felt like this safe room full of intelligent, questioning and people from different backgrounds, I thought this was a really positive and safe space for myself and for other brothers in the Liverpool area, because we're part of the Liverpool Black Men's Group, to kind of start thinking about this topic. So that's what I want to throw out. Christianity is a white man's religion, and yeah, I'd like to talk that through.
I like you to go with that, Errol. I see you moving. Only because it's like it taps into what I liked about what you were telling me or informing me about you know, the covenant and religion stuff that you encountered when you visited Ethiopia. Yeah. So it's kind of like when I've never heard the words Ethiopia equated with Christianity or religion. Okay. So in that aspect, maybe that can help combat, or not really combat, but discuss with the white man's Christianity topic.
Yeah, I think it's because people have a lack of history themselves. And the last 500 years of history, which has been mainly European domination, they equate that with Christianity, colonialism, shackled slavery, and these type of things, especially what happened to the people from West Africa going over to the Caribbean. So many blacks equate that with Christianity because they came in the name of Jesus, you know. But to be precise, it's like I just watched something on YouTube earlier on. Somebody sent me, sorry, not YouTube, a TikTok, and it was about a guy and his woman who were a different denomination anyway. I don't want to attack anybody, but they would claim they were going to Ethiopia to evangelize the Ethiopians.
Whoa!
And somebody said to them, "It's like going to America and saying, 'Have you seen the Statue of Liberty?' Because Ethiopia is the first place of Christianity. It's the first nation to become Christian officially. Mm-hmm. You know, the first person to outside of the family of Israel is recorded in the Bible as an Ethiopian being baptized by the Apostle Philip in the book of Acts, chapter 8, verse 27 to the end. So Ethiopia is one of the first Christian nations in the world. You know, which many people don't realize that Christianity grew up in Jerusalem. It's kind of, we could call it the center of the world because it bridges Europe, Asia, and Africa. So when Christianity started to spread under the Roman Empire, who was in power at that time, the first places it hit, look at the empire that the Romans had in Africa. You know, so from Jerusalem, automatically went to Asia and it went to Africa. It didn't come to Europe. Well, it went to Rome and it went to Greece. So we're talking about what we call Northern Europe, Britain and these places, much later, you know. But in the first 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, it's in all of North Africa, it's in Egypt, it's in Ethiopia. And these are two of the oldest Christian churches that we still have today, the Coptic Egyptian Church and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Now, what's fascinating about that is because, again, as the American here, I grew up on television, so all my religion comes from televangelism. But in that aspect is that, you know, what you're saying is people are never equating, when we talk about Egypt, when we talk about all these places, they're never equating the fact that they're in Africa. So what we see is a bunch of bronze, heavily tanned white people in the films. And this is what we grow up with. Yeah. And then so what we don't understand is that when I think we were having that conversation earlier is that, you know, these people are indeed black. Now, our world traveler here, maybe you can chime in here, James, on that, because you've been to these places yourself.
Well, as far as you're talking to places like Egypt, I haven't actually been to Egypt, but I've done research on it. And there's enough research we've all done on it to know that the first people there were black people. Yeah. They came from the south. The DNA of the ancient Egyptians is from the south meaning Nubia, Sudan, Kush, Uganda. Sudan, yeah. We're not talking about anywhere in the north.
Yeah.
So we know that the first people were black people, but we also know that Israel, what we call Israel, was a connection with Egypt. This thing of borders, this is a new thing with borders and that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people have gone back and forth, just like Ethiopia would go back and forth to the Saudi Arabia, what we call Arabia, back and forth. It's some people, Europeans give a story of like, we all stayed still. And we didn't mix, we didn't share ideas. People didn't learn off Africans, in the last 1,000 years. So it's a big connection. And if you haven't, like Errol said before, the people haven't looked at history due to what's gone on in the last 500 years. And this is another reason why everything's whitewashed. Just same topic as we're talking about Christianity. Literally. Now, from what I've researched, listen to Dr. Yoshi Ben Yachanan and people like that, it's an African religion. Mm-hmm. The same with even Islam, the same with the Hebrew Israelites. It all has its elements back in Africa. The more further we go back, you just see the blacker it gets.
Yeah.
That's facts.
Yeah.
So that's just what I'd like to say on that.
Yeah.
The more further we go back, the blacker it gets. And that's including in places like Asia, the Pacific, Australia, and including parts of Europe. We have Cheddar Man there. He was a black man 10,000 odd years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really glad that you said that, because actually when my brother was speaking beforehand, Errol, you were talking about the history of Christianity. I'm a Christian, but I also I recognise the roots of the faith, and the roots of the faith. Because a lot of times when I say the statement to people, it kind of makes people go, but then when you kind of think about it, it makes sense. And I say this statement to people: Jesus wasn't a Christian.
Hebrew.
He was Hebrew. He was Jewish, and he was brought up in the Jewish tradition. Yeah. He was, there are obviously stories about his birth, where he was born, the town that he came from, and then where he then moved to. Obviously there's the nativity story about how his parents were fearful for his life, and so they moved from Bethlehem to Egypt. Right. And they lived in Egypt, but still, as a people, the people that and the tradition that he grew up in, it was a Hebrew tradition. Yeah. The Israelites, and if you can kind of go back through the family history, and you go back to Abraham, who later became Abraham, the father of many nations, he came out of
Mesopotamia.
Exactly.
Well,
and he came from that tradition. He came from that area,
Western Asia. Exactly,
and then he moved into he had his travels, and he moved into different places around the Holy Lands. But the people, the demographic, the DNA of those people, all the way back to Abraham, they were black people. Yep. And so even as you keep going through, and you keep coming through the fathers, and as you said, they didn't stay still. The different families and the different people that would connect and intermarry, and all those types of things. It was still a very, very it was very melanin heavy genealogy that our Hebrew nation came from, and then those that were the early disciples of Jesus. Disciples comes from the word mathetes, which people who are students, pupils that lived with and studied with Jesus. They also were from different places, but a number of them were clearly also black.
That's right.
Those first disciples that were then called apostles, and then they went and took the.
See, if you go back before that, because I always like to deal things in chronological order. So my parents are before me. I can't get round that. And the same within Africa, the spirituality, the first peoples. This is the beginning, so that's why I always deal in chronological order. Now, when we talk about Mesopotamia, we're dealing with the last couple of 1,000 years you're talking about.
Yeah.
Before that, Africans, Cushites, were in these areas. They were going into these areas, migrating. I don't mean migrating as in the first people. I'm talking about the seeds of civilization bringing in. There's a difference. Hundreds of thousands of years when people left Africa, that's the first migration. But later on, bringing the seeds of civilization to these different peoples. So when we go into Mesopotamia, there's evidence of black people there. Yeah. They called them in Sumer, the black-headed people. That's what they were called. Mm-hmm. You had the Colchians. They're finally admitting now that these were black people, Cushite or Egyptian stock. So these things are all coming out later. But when I have a conversation with Errol, we talk a lot, you see. Errol opens my mind on a lot of things. And I really appreciate that, because this is important, you see, where I had a bit of a negative thoughts on Christianity. Now, when I've had good conversations with Errol, and he broke it down, because he knows the Bible inside out. So when Errol's explained to me westernized Christianity, and then you've got the Orthodox, and then he explained also, and he can explain himself. So I said, oh, what about the Greeks, the Russians, and, you know, like that. So these little schisms that will come in, but I want you to...
Yeah, because like my brother Adeyinka has already explained, that when he even said Christ was not a Christian, what he really means is that Christ, yes, was a Hebrew, a man of Israel, but he was the Messiah in the Hebrew language. Bring that into Greek or English, he is the Christ, the anointed one. The Messiah, the Christ, the Christos, it means the anointed one of God. Okay? So the word Christian comes, them who are followers of Jesus Christ.
I was going to bring
They're
that.
little
I was going to bring that.
You know, so that's where the word Christian comes from. And they were first called that in Antioch.
Indeed,
Right, okay,
You know?
Can I just ask you, because I know you could explain it, and because I was going to say the same thing.
Okay.
You must have heard of the Council of Nicaea.
Yes.
So wasn't this now? Here's my perspective as the ugly American. It was in.
You're not ugly, bro.
All right, I know I'm not. Thanks. In 330 AD.
32 AD.
I'm close though, right?
Yeah, you're close.
Anyway, 332 AD.
Some say 325.
Oh, whatever, bro.
You know these different days, but
I'm
carry on.
damn close.
Carry on.
Anyway, that the Council of Nicaea sat around and they invented the whole Christ anointed one, and they needed someone to be that person, and they chose this person of Jesus.
That's actually
Now
not.
I'm just saying.
that's
Hold
not
on.
a
You
correct.
always get this narrative.
I had to get something wrong.
What's so crucial about, that's why I said before, people have a lack of history.
Mm-hmm.
The Council of Nicaea was convened by the Emperor Constantine.
Yes, right.
Everybody always says Constantine created Christ. He chose the Bible. Constantine was not a theologian, okay? What was happening is that he was the head of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
He's seen the divisions within the Christian. There were some people, Christ is not a God. He's just a man. He is God. Okay? So the early Christians, the disciples, the apostles, Christ was the God-man.
Yeah.
He is man, perfect God. But there was another person who was also an African named Arius, who was preaching. He came from North Africa, and he was preaching that, no, God, Christ was not a God, but he was just a man. So this caused a dispute within the Christian circles. Constantine he wanted to keep order within the Roman Empire, and he seen these disputes going on because Christianity was growing rapid fire. Many of the people were turning from paganism to Christianity.
Yeah.
And to just track back quickly, the more the Romans persecuted Christians, the more people became Christians, which is, something to look at again, is another whole podcast. But Constantine's mother, Helena, was a Christian. His mother was a Christian, a devout Christian. Okay? So he decided to convey this council. And why he had it in Nicaea is because, which was in Turkey, modern day Turkey, Istanbul, or somewhere around there, is because the persecution that happened in Rome, the Christians might have thought, you want to get them all together in Rome and slaughter them. So we said, okay, we'll take it to the east to show them that we are friendly, we are so-and-so. And what people tend to forget, that the church fathers that arrived there, the one who defended what won out the argument in the end was a bishop named Athanasius from Egypt, also a black man, was fighting against Arius, also a black man from Carthage. These two different doctrines.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, not everyone who converted, not every bishop was black. You had 4 sees of Christianity: Antioch, Jerusalem, Egypt, and Rome.
Yeah.
Okay? And then it went to Byzantium. So bishops came from every see.
Yeah.
Even they came from Ethiopia, who was under the see of St. Mark, who was a black man, who was an African, who established the church in Egypt. That's why it's called the See of St. Mark. But basically, that council was to decide the theology of what the early Christians believed, what the apostles, and the disciples
But it
taught.
still was 300 years after Christ.
Yes.
But
That
what's
was my
important to understand is that what they weren't doing was inventing something.
Oh,
what
no.
they
Yeah.
were
No,
deciding.
but
What they
they
were
had to
deciding to do.
choose, like
Well,
you said.
yeah, it's to say, well, okay, within the Hebrew tradition,
Yeah.
there is. I mean, you mentioned the Greek rendition of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
but actually Messiah, the Messiah, was within Greek tradition.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Greek tradition. Sorry,
Hebrew.
the Hebrew
Hebrew.
tradition. And you know the devout Hebrews and Jewish different types in Jewish sects were all looking for a Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
They were all wondering who this Messiah was gonna be. And it's not that the Christians came together and thought, "Oh, we'll come up with the idea of Jesus being a Messiah, and let's try and fool people to believe in him." There was already within the
Yeah.
Jewish tradition the recognition and the understanding that a Messiah would come. They thought the Messiah was going to be a military leader.
Yeah.
And he was going to kick the butt of the Romans and, you know, make everything all nice and you know, rebuild Israel's wealth and put their foot on the neck of everybody around.
Yeah.
That's what they were hoping for. So when Jesus came, he was actually a bit of a disappointment to a lot of Jewish people.
Yeah.
Because he didn't come out, raise an army and kick some butt. What he did was actually bring, and this is what he was trying to. His message was about the kingdom of God coming near.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about the kingdom of man in the way that man wants kingdoms on the planet and rule other people, subjugate other people, all that sort of thing. He was saying, no, you guys have all got this wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and when you talk about temples, you guys think about buildings. No. You know, you destroy this temple, I'll rebuild this temple in 3 days. He wasn't talking about sticks and stones. He wasn't talking about gold and bricks. He was talking about our bodies. You know, he was also talking about the kingdom of God in a different way that was actually recognized within Jewish tradition, but not regularly preached about and not regularly understood by people, which is why I believe it passed a lot of people by. But the idea of there being a Messiah who was both God and man was extant. It was there deep, like, you know, like the words Blackpool Rock that go all the way through Blackpool Rock.
Yeah.
It was all the way through the Jewish tradition, but they just were kind of blinkered because they really wanted to be free of oppression.
Yeah.
Like the Liverpool Black Men's Group. You know, one of the things we talk
Let me
about.
try and answer back because
Sorry,
you
go
kind
ahead,
of give him
brother.
about a good background history.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's answering his question.
Remember to mention
Because-
the letter J.
Because
Yeah.
It's only a couple of 100 years old.
because of what happened in Nicaea, why the Christians wouldn't have come together and invented a Christ figure that we always hear that narrative is because you've got to realize that Christianity is being persecuted by the Romans for 300 to 400 years, 300 years up to that point. Okay, so in 325, which is the correct date of Nicaea, the bishops came, one arm broke, bent, eye poked out, tongue cut out. They come there like a raggle-taggle of persecution, broken. They had already lost the arm and a leg. They weren't about to... Look, if they were prepared to lose that in the defense of the gospel, why would they come to Nicaea and change the whole thing and create something? They've already had their eyes poked out, put into
Den of Lions.
boiling hot water, dens of lions. And like I say, the more they done that to Christians, the more Christianity grew.
Yeah. But it was also what this man of Nazareth had done or rumored to have done or what they remembered to have done 300 years later. That was what my point was. The acts of goodness that he had created or has been known for is the reason why he was the choice that was made and stuff in that aspect because, you know, for Christianity to grow, for what you just said, out of persecution there is strength. We need hope in a moment of hopelessness. You know, why not choose the person who only preached about turning the other cheek?
Although there's an aspect of this that I think is important. Again, a lot of Christians have issues with even today because you can't have Christianity without Christ. And the thing that is particular about Jesus Christ, and the specific reason why he was crucified, was not because he talked about turning the other cheek.
Mm-hmm.
That is not what made the chief priests and the scribes tear their clothes when Jesus gave his testimony. The thing that made them tear their clothes and say, we're killing this brother, is because he claimed to be God. He claimed authority. He didn't just heal the sick. He didn't just open the eyes of blind people. He didn't just feed a whole bunch of people with some nice bacon sandwiches from Subway or whatever. That wasn't his message, was to bring a packed lunch.
Yeah.
His message was to say, look, big neon signs, I am the Messiah. I am he. I'm the one you have been looking for. It is me. And these are my signs and wonders that point towards. I can say myself that I am, but if you don't believe who I am, watch what I do. Because the word "I am that I am," the revelation that Moses had in the desert, and further fathers, Jewish fathers have had of God, when God was self-revealing himself to man, to that nation, each time he gave his name, although we don't know it rendered correctly, he says, I am.
Yeah.
And when they say when Moses said, who shall I say sent me? He said, tell them that I am sent you. And I am that I am is I am that which I will be. So it's almost like I am that which you will see me doing. You will see me being God. And Jesus came and said the same. He said, to the woman at the well, thank you, that I am he. And he also said to the Sanhedrin, I am.
Yeah.
I am the I am. It's not just what I will do in the power of I am, in the name of I am.
You know, when you mentioned about the anointed one, do you ever deal with something like dealing with a Christ consciousness? Does that ring a bell to you?
There is such a thing, I believe.
Yeah, because when I say a Christ consciousness, that could be for many different prophets. For example, if you know what I mean, not just only
any of the apostles. Again, the word apostle is someone that's sent, a messenger, someone that works plenipotentiary with the power and authority of the one that sends them. And so there are many people who can and have operated in the power of Christ. That's basically the baptism of the Spirit.
Christians are to have a Christ mind, basically.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Chase's question, though, because I don't think we're answering his question. The reason why Nicaea was called is because people started to question what Christians believe.
Yeah.
Prior to people questioning it, Christians knew what they believed.
Yeah.
And they died for it. You see what I'm saying?
That they had faith.
That they had faith that Christ was God and man. It wasn't something invented, like Adeyinka has explained beautifully, at Nicaea. It was always there within the Jewish tradition. So that council, it's just like
wasn't it fortified there though?
No, because Christians already believed it.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, what about Constantine and everything for everyone else?
No,
though?
his mother already believed it.
What
they were doing, let me just finish. Okay. What they were doing was expelling the myth that this brother called Arius was saying that Christ was not God. Okay. So there was a small sect that Arius had convinced that Jesus is not God, he's just a man.
Yeah. Okay.
So so the whole concept that what we believe from the early days of the apostles, that Christ is the God man, won over because it's always what they believed in the first place. Yeah. Do you understand? So that answers the question of why Nicaea was. And to give us a very small example, when Christianity arrived in Jerusalem and first came up, when they wanted to convert people who were non-Jews, there was a dispute amongst the apostles whether or not the Gentiles, the people who were non-Jews, should be circumcised physically and eat kosher food. So they convened a council. The first council we find is in the book of the Bible itself. And it was declared that no, they don't need to be circumcised, but it's a circumcision of their heart. Baptism became the new form of circumcision. Right. And also non-Jews didn't have to convert to eating kosher food. Yeah. That's why different Christian nations now eat what they like. They eat what the traditions of their nations, because the commission that was given to the apostles was to go to all nations and preach this word, baptizing them in the name of the Father,
Jesus
Son, and the
said
Holy
specifically
Spirit.
that it's not what goes into a man that makes them unclean, it's what comes out of
yeah.
them.
Whoa, like his poo. Anyway, so, brothers, we're getting a signal, man. You know, I mean, this was not a heated conversation, but an enlightening one. And I just want to thank you all for joining me here at the table today for this particular discussion. We should have more of these discussions. We don't have just this type of discussion. We talk about every different topic under the sun and everything. But please follow us, you know, when our channel forms out, the Liverpool Black Men's Group and everything. But for now, I want to thank my brother to my left here, Adeyinka.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for letting us have this conversation in this place with these learned and respectful brothers.
I just hope that people also realize that not only can you like and subscribe, but you can also write in the chat, because like these brothers, you know, definitely have something, and I'm always enlightened by their knowledge. So thank you, James.
Thank you very much. Glad to be back
thank
on.
you. And we
And
surely
Errol
have
Graham.
to do a part 2 on this, because
Well, yeah, you know
there's
what?
a lot
Listen,
to cover.
bro, you know what? You
Next
need
time,
your own thing.
Next time, you know what? Next time we could add some spirituality on it. Because
We've been spiritual
because,
here all day.
Yeah, no, what I mean is like dealing from a beginning of something. Even before man left Africa, man was spiritual. Before they even moved other parts of the world, spirituality is a beginning thing. It's not like a Johnny come lately.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
No, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember we had that discussion before, and definitely needs to be enlightened more again. But I also want to thank my man Jay Blaze for being at the desk for us and everything. So once again, this
Big
is
up,
the
Jay.
Big up, Jay.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you. This is the Liverpool Black Men's Group. This has been our discussion on Christianity. Hope you enjoyed it as we have done. So until the next time, see you again.
Peace out.
Peace.